The Prime Minister is in Asia with a lot on his plate, but many Canadians want to see how he deals with Aung San Suu Kyi. They're meeting just hours away now. She has been under fire for months for her country's treatment of Rohingya Muslims and for her tepid response. Nala Ayed looks at whether Canada has any influence. Nala.
Rosemary, long before the current crisis erupted, concerns about the human rights of Rohingya have been raised with Aung San Suu Kyi. It was after former Secretary of State John Kerry brought it up last year that she said, rather starkly, that Myanmar needed space to deal with what is a very difficult and sensitive internal issue.
All we are asking is that people should be aware of the difficulties that we are facing and to give us enough space to sort out our problems.
Well, that was back in May 2016, before hundreds of thousands of Rohingya escaped a campaign of what many have described as ethnic cleansing, and which the UN, as well as survivors, blame on the Myanmar military, which we can't forget is still effectively running the country. In between, Suu Kyi and Myanmar have been given space on the issue. The U.S. lifted its sanctions last year, and despite complaints from human rights groups, it seems quiet diplomacy was and still is the preferred way to approach Myanmar on the Rohingya issue. The Prime Minister's envoy, Bob Rae, has just returned from a visit to Myanmar.
I don't know whether it's fair to say she has all the space in the world or not. The issue of the Rohingya has been a matter of dispute for a long time, and they have been increasingly marginalized, and those steps have not, frankly, been unpopular with the rest of the country. So she is going to need to move. The country does have to move in a way that will embrace diversity and pluralism.
Easy to say, but the question is how. There's been a parade of world figures who have met her who thought they had sway. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres hoped a meeting back in May would open doors.
Issues of governance, of democracy, of human rights, and how Canada...
And Justin Trudeau also brought up the rights of Rohingya behind closed doors in Ottawa back in June. One hope for concrete action came from former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan. At Suu Kyi's request, he led a year-long commission with concrete recommendations on how to solve the Rohingya crisis. She accepted the recommendations, but there has still been little perceptible change. In fact, things have gotten worse. So when the violence started, we saw some tough talk from world leaders, including Guterres and Trudeau. Again, no perceptible change. And in no small part, some insist, including some Rohingya we spoke to in Bangladesh, because it's really the military in charge. So what can Justin Trudeau possibly accomplish tomorrow that others haven't?
Well, I think we all have to keep trying. I don't think it's going to be easy. I think it's an ongoing and persistent dialogue.
Okay, so Nala, has Aung San Suu Kyi made any moves herself towards trying to reconcile or solve this crisis?
Well, last week, Suu Kyi did visit the troubled Rakhine state for the first time since the crisis started, and diplomats are saying to us that the international message has been heard in Myanmar. The question is how it responds and how much more space it needs to do it.
And, you know, we're talking about Justin Trudeau meeting her, but do we have any sense of what kind of impact that could have, any soft power that he might have there to try and influence her?
Well, for one, it's going to be one of her first meetings, actually, with a Western head of state since the crisis started. So that perhaps gives it more weight than it normally would have. Activists, though, are hoping for something more concrete from Trudeau. One I spoke to here in London said he must pressure Suu Kyi to commit again to implementing Kofi Annan's recommendations and to making it easier for Rohingya who have left the country to return.
Okay.
Rosemary.
Nala, thanks for that. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Not surprising that many people are disappointed in Aung San Suu Kyi. After all, she's had a long way to fall because for decades, she's been held up as an icon of democratic struggle. That started in 1988 when she led anti-government protests. She had the pedigree. Her father was a hero of Burmese independence, so her activism worried military rulers. They shut down the protests, then shut Suu Kyi up, locking her under house arrest for about 20 years. But from behind her gated home, the lady made her mark. Leader of the main opposition party, recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize, honorary Canadian citizen, once freed, she seemed to justify all the praise, demanding reforms from the military, winning national elections, sharing power since then. But she, like her country, has a blind spot, an anti-Muslim bias. And it's exactly that which has some Canadians calling for the government to strip her of that honorary citizenship. Suu Kyi is one of 6 people to ever get it in the world. No one has lost it.